Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Bibliophile series, the series in which we go through articles that are presented, two articles in a week. So this week I'm trying something new on the same issue, the old age of presidential nominees from the two major parties in the US, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Both of them are very young. Back when they were contesting the election in 2020 for the post of presidency, they were the two oldest people ever to contest for the post of presidency. 4 years on, somehow the two parties have not found better candidates or younger candidates. They're still the two oldest people ever to contest. The record was just set in the last election cycle, and now the record is again being set in this election cycle. On that issue, some people are of the opinion both of them are old, and on the same issue, some people are of the opinion one person is better than the other. So both the articles this week, the one that comes out today and the one that comes out the next week, are going to be on the same issue. It is just that I want to analyze their argumentation style or the merit of the argument being presented by two writers on the same issue. This article for today is The White House is No Place for Old Men, written by Kathleen Parker, and it appeared in Washington Post. The other article is also from Washington Post, written by a different person. Let's go through the article for today, and then perhaps when we do the second article, you would see a greater comparative analysis happening. Okay, starting off. The first shots of the 2024 battle for presidency have been fired by the two oldest humans ever to suffer self-delusion at the country's expense. Self-delusion here would refer to the idea that despite their advancing age and the implied cognitive decline, these two people believe that they are the best people to lead the country. The highest stakes contest in the democratic world is between a criminal and a codger. Criminal is, of course, in reference to Trump, who has been found guilty of 34 felony charges and perhaps more charges that will come up later. And a codger, somebody who is losing his mental faculties. Former President Donald Trump's newly burnished criminal record is well known, guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records. With rare glee, Biden the elder, he's older than Trump, now wields criminal to describe Trump like a drunken Jedi with a lightsaber. Essentially, he has an avenue to attack Trump now because Trump is legally criminal. He has been convicted of the charges that were leveled against him of falsifying business records. He should enjoy the moment. Biden should enjoy the moment because otherwise the president toggles between lucidity and a dimming of the mind that is obvious to anyone whose political interests do not require denial. Okay. It's implied that Biden has periods of sanity and periods of losing control of his mental faculties. And it is obvious to anyone whose career or political interests do not align with claiming that no, he's fine. Everything that he does is in control. A recent investigation by the Wall Street Journal tracked Biden's cognitive condition and interviewed 45 lawmakers and administration officials about it. The result was a narrative that should unnerve Americans, considering a second term for Biden. So, this should give you pause to wonder and give you second thoughts about electing Biden for the second term, who would be 86 in 2028. That is when if he does contest and win the election, he would be 86 by the time his second tenure ends. In US, you can only be president for 2 terms. So by the time second term ends, he would be 86. In the journal's report, observers, most but not all Republicans, said Biden is no longer his former self. Now see, Republicans, why they're mentioning this fact is, Republicans, Biden is a Democratic Party representative. So if you talk to the Republicans, you have to understand that they would have their own biases. They would have their own biases. They will, of course, say the president is not doing a good job and the president's mental faculties are compromised because they have their own bias. But it is not all Republicans, most of them are, but not all observers, but not all people that were interviewed out of the 45 lawmakers and administration officials that were contacted. Biden is no longer his formal self. He's no longer behaving like he used to earlier. Democrats, including presidential staffers, disagree, saying in effect, oh no, he's 100% in control, which seems at odds with his public appearances, the speeches that he makes, the statements that he issues. There have been lots of instances of him making provably false statements or outlandish remarks about, let's say, talking to some world leader that is no longer in this world anymore. And like I was recently talking to XYZ person, and that person does not exist anymore. So wonderful things are happening. This claim of him being 100% in control seems a little odd. They explained away accounts of the president repeating stories as Biden being Biden. Essentially, Biden has always misspoken. Biden has always made errors in speaking. He stutters and all. This is not a sign of mental decline. This is very much in line with how he has always behaved. But he was said to be repeating stories in the same meeting. The author is against this idea of Biden being 100% in control or and such instances being explained away. Biden was just being Biden. Biden was repeating the same stories in a meeting. President also frequently uses note cards to stay on track in meetings, according to the journal. The journal here is the Wall Street Journal. It has been shortened to journal. Staff, a member of the staff said, that's perfectly normal. Lots of presidents do that. Not really, but fine. This is where the author is coming in. Not really, but fine. There's no crime in referring to notes when specifics are crucial. At least he didn't write them on the palm of his hand as his erstwhile vice presidential opponent, Sarah Palin, once did. Sarah Palin ran against Joe Biden as the vice presidential nominee back in 2008 election cycle, when Obama's second term was coming into fruition. At that time, 2008 or 2012, I can't seem to recall, but one of those presidential cycles when Biden was the vice presidential candidate for Barack Obama, Palin was his opponent, and Palin had the uh, dishonor of being caught with notes written on the palm of her hand. If you follow WWE, this was also a storyline where Rock had written his promo notes on his hand, and John Cena, in a promo battle with him, pointed out that at least I don't have to write my notes on my hand. Became a big issue. This is a sign. This is usually looked as a sign of huge weakness if you can't even remember certain points that you're supposed to speak in front of an audience. Okay. Others in the journal report described Biden's voice as being so low at times and his enunciation nearly indecipherable. You cannot make head or tail of it. You cannot make sense of it. That people had to strain to hear or understand him, as though someone had pulled the plug from the president and he was slowly shutting down. Basically, he's speaking. Let's say if the exercise had to be repeated, he's speaking in a confident manner, and then he shuts down. Perhaps you can't even hear what I'm saying right now. The volume goes down tremendously. That is how he is speaking in meetings, or that is how his voice is behaving right now. It is almost as if he's slowly shutting down. At least one media outlet has taken the journal reporters to task. CNN reported glaring problems in the piece, pointing out that most of the critics were Republicans. Understand? Argumentation. Most of the critics were Republicans, which is not to say all the critics were Republicans. There were certain neutrals or Democrats who also aligned with the idea that Biden is losing his head a little bit. Fair point. But people who follow the news and see Biden on television or online have seen for themselves that he occasionally slips. And there is no arguing against it. In fact, if you follow the Daily Show, on which Jon Stewart recently made a triumphant comeback. One of his earliest episodes, he talked of everyone in the administration from the Democratic Party says that Biden is in control, Biden is leading meetings, Biden is doing a lot of good work, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, can we see a proof of that? Can we see any meeting where he is in control? Can we see? Basically, what we see is Biden slipping up always. What you are claiming, he is in absolute control. These two things are at odds, and you cannot explain it away. No, no. In private meetings, he's smart, but in public meetings, when he's addressing a gathering, then he's not smart. Seems at odds. Seems like you're deliberately trying to mislead towards your political interests. Fair point, but people who follow the news and see Biden on television or online have seen for themselves that he occasionally says, who are we trying to kid? The journal report received an almost immediate boost when the president's mind wandered off script during his otherwise inspiring speech in France this week to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. Now, D-Day invasion is in reference to the Second World War. And Biden was giving a speech in France this week. Speaking to the D-Day veterans, Biden drew a parallel to the Ukraine's war against Russia, saying the allies should support Ukraine. He then lamented the hundreds of thousands of Russian troops killed in Ukraine. I understand if you know about the Russian-Ukraine struggle and everything, Russia is the aggressor. So if you have to lament the deaths, you would be lamenting the deaths on the side that is defending itself rather than the side that is attacking. Him making comments that hundreds of thousands of Russian troops have unnecessarily died in the battle is not a good look because it essentially, see, Russia and US are anyway international adversaries. So him taking a stance in support of Ukraine makes sense. Him taking a stance in support of Russians is very, very nonsensical. Not something that a person who is in 100% control. And the statement is given. They've suffered tremendous losses with Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Most likely he meant to say Ukrainian, but he ended up saying Russian because deciphering what he's saying is becoming progressively more difficult. Maybe Democrats have merely grown accustomed to Biden's manner of speaking through the decades. It's true that a younger Biden also often suffered a disconnect between his brain and his mouth. Even earlier, when Biden was younger, there were instances when he misspoke what he was thinking of and what he was speaking of. There was a disconnect. Maybe that is what Democrats have gone used to. His legendary malaprops and slip-ups could fill a doorstop volume. Now, doorstop volume would mean a book that is so thick that it could stop a door from closing. Usually you have, and this is very much in reference to US-based construction. There, the doors automatically stop if you leave it. They automatically stop. You will perhaps see them in offices now. So if you have a thick enough book that can stop this door, that would be called a doorstop volume. So his legendary malaprops and slip-ups could fill a doorstop volume. He has had numerous instances of misspeaking. Biden has put his foot in his mouth so many times that his tongue and toes have created a comedy act, and I hear hired an agent. See, the author here has tried to bring in a little bit of humor into the write-up just to make it more accessible, connect more with people. He has had lots of instances. He has had so many slip-ups that his foot, see, his tongue, he has put his foot in mouth. Foot in mouth is misspeaking again, saying something outrageous. So many times that his tongue and toes have created a comedy act. Tongue and toes are close together. They have created a comedy act, and they've hired an agent, emphasizing on the comedy aspect of it, that they have hired an agent. They have become so popular. They have reached such great levels of fame. Okay. Next. Or maybe people are lying and covering for the president for fear that honesty would empower Trump. See, even if people believe that Biden is no longer in control and Biden is no longer fully in command of his cognitive faculties, they are still saying, no, no, Biden is in control, because saying otherwise would perhaps be a boost for Trump. And they believe out of the two evils, Trump coming to power is the greater evil. And therefore, even if Biden not being in complete control of his senses is true, at least let us pretend otherwise so that Trump does not get any advantage. If you find this stack, if you find this argumentation defensible, I highly suggest a quick read of Jerzy Kosinski being there. If that's too taxing, there's also a movie. I have no clue who Jerzy Kosinski is, what being there is. I haven't seen the movie. I haven't read whatever this is. If it's a book, it's an article. I have absolutely no clue. But then this is perhaps an argument against. This is perhaps an argument against why you should be preferring the lesser evil over the larger evil. This is not to suggest that Trump is the better candidate. Okay. The author is also making her biases very, very clear. We are saying that Biden's mental faculties are compromised, evidenced by his public appearances. This is not to make the claim that Trump would be a better candidate. We are not supporting Trump. We are simply saying Biden is unfit. That does not reflect on Trump, which should now lead to how has the country after 4 years ended up with the same two candidates as it did the last time. And if you do a deep dive, you'll realize the Democratic Party has rigged the election process so severely. How elections happen there is, first there are primaries held at state level, and then after the primaries, whichever candidate wins the nomination of the party ends up contesting the presidential election. In this cycle, the Democratic Party cancelled all the primaries, saying that no, Biden is the presumptive choice. Right, Biden is the presumptive nominee. We don't need any primary elections because any average Democratic representative in polls was beating Biden. And because they did not want Biden to come on stage and engage in a debate, they did not want Biden to be in front of the cameras too much. Biden has done very little campaigning. There have not been any primaries, and Biden has become the nominee by default. The Democratic Party has done a great disservice to the people of America because they wanted different candidates. There is the independent candidate RFK Jr. He has his own set of challenges. He believes vaccines are evil, and a lot of other conspiracy theories. He's basically the outlet for. If you've heard of a conspiracy theory, maybe RFK has at one point or the other supported it. Then there was Julian. There is one Julian. No, there is an Julian, basically a progressive candidate who believes in providing, let's say, taxing the wealthy, a proposition that has over 70% of the Americans agreeing on it. There is not a single candidate in the race that supports that idea. All of them are always saying, but no, how will we do that? Every American politician is in favor of increasing military spending. They are favoring giving tax cut to the rich. But whenever it comes to helping the general population by, let's say, providing health care, guaranteed health care, or by providing access to education, higher education, free access in public colleges, they're like, no, where are you going to pay for it? When it comes to tax cuts, there is never an argument of that nature. When it comes to defense spending, US spends more on defense spending than the next 10 countries combined. Next 10 countries in the world combined, and engages in endless wars. Yet, all the spending on that front, they are okay with. But when it comes to materially improving the life of the general population, whether it is Democrats or Republicans more than Democrats, but both the parties are essentially doing the same thing. How are we going to pay for it? This does not make sense. This is not right. It always becomes a storyline. Basically, America, despite being the richest nation ever in the history of this world, has a lot of laws that is worse than, let's say, other advanced nations. Let's say you go to Europe, you go to Germany, or you go to France. If you fall ill, you go to the hospital. The entire process is free at the point of service. But in US, you have tremendous fees that you have to pay at every level. Amazingly bad. But okay, coming back to this article, this is not to suggest that Trump is the better candidate, but he benefits from human forgetfulness, or what is properly known in English as uh, what absence makes the heart grow fonder. People are forgetting when he did lose the last election, what he engaged in at the end of it. But he benefits from human forgetfulness. People have forgotten how tense the situation was after the January 6 riots, the insurrection attempt, as suggested by recent polling. Trump is more popular now than when he left office in 2021. And hopefully you realize there are two reasons for this. One, the media has been media, or there is even in US media, there are two dedicated wings, one that supports the Republican narrative, one that supports the Democratic narrative. The two media narratives, Biden is doing this bad, Biden is doing that bad, Biden has done this, Biden has done that, Hunter Biden, Biden mafia family, they're labeling that, completely staying silent on the fact that as soon as Trump presidency was over, Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of Trump, got a 3 billion investment in his investment firm from Saudi Arabia. This is immaterial. He is a smart businessman, but everything Hunter Biden has done is bad. See, for any normal person, what Hunter Biden got as the member of the board in a Ukrainian energy company, and what Jared Kushner got from Saudi Arabia, both of those things are bad. Both of them are bad. But then Fox News spreads the narrative Biden is bad, and let's say CNN or MSNBC, these news outlets spread the narrative that Trump is bad, and they keep on fighting, keep on misleading. Instead of this is the point of media narrative. The second thing is, even when Democrats were in power, they were in power, they had the presidency, they had the House, they had the Senate, they had there was a significant duration where they were controlling all three branches of the executive. Yet they did not make any material changes to improve the lives of the people. One of the best ways of winning elections is actually helping the population that put you in office. But that was too much to do because they had to benefit their donors. They had to help their donors. So nothing really has happened that would be. See, even if I tell you that XYZ is a bad person, but that XYZ helps you, you will not trust me. You will, mm, you will believe what you have factually been impacted by. But then if XYZ doesn't help you and I keep on telling you he's a bad person, most likely you will fall for the trap. That is where the role of media comes in and the inaction on the part of Democratic Party comes in. Okay. Uh, Trump is more popular now than when he left office in 2021. And data from election forecasters, 270 to win. This is the name of the election forecaster. Using 5 recent national surveys, shows Trump and Biden tied at 44.2% each, 44.2% each. Both of them are equally popular, equally likely to become the president, basis the national surveys, by average of 5 recent national surveys. Almost 56% of Americans disapprove of the job Biden is doing, according to Real Clear Politics. Yeah. Real Clear Politics is the metric they use, where they take average of national polls and come to the number. Now, this almost 56%, this data is also misleading. This data is slightly misleading because if almost 56% of Americans disapprove of the job Biden is doing, almost 56% of the people are also unwilling to let Trump come into power. See, when I make a choice, which is why there is a push, not in great numbers, but there is a push to have rank voting there. If rank voting was allowed, then people would actually get to know if you're against somebody or you're for somebody. Because right now, when you make a choice in favor of A, that does not mean you support B. Or if you make a choice against A, that does not mean you are entirely against A, entirely against A. But making this assumption, 44.2% each, almost 56% of Americans disapprove of the Joe Biden. There's something that happens in Indian elections also. Let's say a party comes to power with 38% of national vote share, but majority seats in the Lok Sabha, then but only 38% voted for this party. 62% of the people were against this party. Not necessarily. 62% of the people chose to vote for some other party. But because this party has one maximum number of seats, they are the majority party. This percentage analysis is very, very flawed. This percentage analysis is very, very flawed. Okay. Then the author goes into, have we really forgotten the events of January 6, 2021, when Trump, glued to his several TV screens, watched protests evolve into a riot and breach the Capitol and kept on watching? This is implying that he had the power to stop it, preemptively stop it, but he did nothing. He kept on watching and let it degenerate into a chaos. By the time he spoke out against the mayhem, the damage was incalculable, not just to the capital and the nerves of those trapped and hunted inside, but to the country's fate in the peaceful transfer of power. Basically, regardless of who wins the election, who does whatever, in US presidential history, never had it happened that a president that had lost or any person that had lost had not conceded the election. There is a concession speech that they gave. Okay, I fought. I know I'm losing. All the best to the other guy. May he take steps to improve the lives of the people that he's now going to represent. Something along those lines. Always, every candidate in every election used to do that. But since 2021, since the last presidential cycle, a new version has come up. The vote was rigged, the election was fixed, illegal voters came in, we demand a recount, illegal voting happened, and all sorts of funny reasons are now being given. And people don't concede elections as much, especially Republicans. And if you're a Republican now, if you're a Republican politician who's trying to contest an election and you end up making the statement, the last election was not fake, the last election was genuine, most likely you're going to lose your own election. Peaceful transfer of power is not going to happen. In fact, a lot of presidential candidates, the Republican Party also had one more fun thing, the Republican Party also had their own primaries. And they had primary debates. They had primary sessions in which different candidates debated and answered questions of the media. Trump declined to participate in these sessions. The other people did. Yet, Trump is the one that becomes their nominee despite not participating in any of the processes of the Republican Party. Additionally, all these people who were running for the post of presidency, it was understood that they were clamoring for the position of vice president because they realized Trump is the most popular. And these people, when they are asked on television, when they're asked on TV interviews and different media appearances that they have, will you accept the election result, whatever it is, what happens in 2024? November 2024 is when this election is going to happen. Will you accept the result? And their response is, we believe that Donald Trump is going to win. We believe that Donald Trump is going. Never going out of their way to say, no, we will accept the results of the election. Because if they win, the elections are fair. If they don't win, the election was unfair. That is a narrative that has been peddled billion times over to the American population. Okay. Trump's trial concerning his sexual history with a porn star was a distraction from his far more serious affronts. See, his sexual history with a porn star was not the issue. Sexual history with a porn star was not the issue. The issue was there are very specific rules with regards to contributions you take for your campaign. If you've taken money for running in an election, and then you are utilizing that money for your personal affairs, then it is a problem. It is not a problem if you use it. Let's say you spend money on ads, you spend money on making media appearances. Sometimes you have to pay money in order to come on certain YouTube channels or certain TV shows. That money spent on posters and markers and speeches and paying the people who are organizing events, that is not a problem. The fact that this payment was made not in connection with any of the election expenses, that is the problem. But then, because the nuance of the subject gets lost in the crowd, people forget it. Trump's trial concerning his sexual history with the porn star was a distraction from his far more serious offense. The lies, absolute lies, disinformation, gaslighting, and pettifoggery. See, Trump lives in an alternate world. Trump lives in an alternate world where if he spoke something that was untrue, he never spoke it, or you don't know the real thing is what he's saying. He basically, if an interviewer asks him a tough question, you are a mean person, you don't support America, and all sorts of wonderful things. Fun fact, back in late 90s, Trump was a Democrat. He became Republican only in early 2010s because he realized that Republican Party has a vacuum at the top in terms of leadership, and he can potentially get to fulfill his presidential ambitions. He's always had presidential ambitions from early 90s, but in early 2010s, he realized that Republican Party path is going to be better. Basically, understand Trump basis his history and his actions is pretty much whichever side seems to be winning, I'm on that side. So there have been instances when he sees that public, the public is against the idea of turning down Roe v. Wade. So when he's on neutral media outlets, when he's on democratic handled media outlets, then he makes the statement, no, we will we have, as in taking away the right from the female to have an abortion is too extreme. We need to have a more moderate position. But when he's on right-wing channels, when he's on right-wing networks, then he ends up saying, I changed the Supreme Court and I got rid of Roe v. Wade. I should be given credit for it. He switches and changes. That is his politician life, and that is fine. Disinformation, wrong information, and gaslighting. Basically, if somebody asks him a valid question, he says, no, no, what you're saying is wrong. This is false. This is untrue. How can you say that? You are being rude. You're not respecting the decorum of this platform. All sorts of wonderful. Pettifoggery. Pettifoggery, understand. Pettiness, hopefully you understand when you get offended by small things and you take revenge for small little things. Even when the intention of the other person was never to insult you or harm you in any way, but you keep count of all the people who have ever wronged you, and then you later on, whenever you get an opportunity, you say bad things about them. Okay. But her testimony of the porn star and that of others reminded us that Trump has a character of a honey badger. Now, honey badger is an animal. Basically, honey badger is somebody who is an animal that is so obsessed with honey that it keeps on going after it even when it realizes that even when he realizes or there are impediments in the path, if he thinks of something, he will keep on going for it regardless of the obstacles in his path. Understand? There is a difference between being a honey badger and being driven. Driven is when you have a worthy goal and you chase it, and honey badger is there is some goal and I chase it. Whether it is worthy, not worthy, but the means that I employ to get to that point, whether they are sensible, not sensible, doesn't matter. The ends justify the means. So when we are calling him a honey badger, we are not calling him driven, that he has made up his mind and is determined and he will get to it. That is not the portrayal or framing that is happening in the article. Trump too has shown signs of cognitive deterioration. In fact, towards the end of his last tenure, he went on a Fox News interview and said, I took a cognitive test. It's a very difficult test. And the test was absolute basic level dementia test, wherein you were shown two images and you're asked which of these is a lion, which of these is a giraffe, those sorts of things. And then in the interview, he ends up picking that test up as it is one of the most difficult tests that a person can take. And the doctors told me you have performed excellently, you have performed better than most people who have ever taken this test. Then you look at the test. If you go back and look at the test, you realize What a load of nonsense he was spewing. Trump too has shown signs of cognitive deterioration, as pointed out by fellow Republicans, including Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley was the strongest Republican candidate, the last person to bow out of the Republican nomination race. And she made comments about Trump losing his mind. Yet, Trump benefits from the comparison with Biden. Trump benefits from the comparison with Biden, who at least twice has reported speaking with world leaders who are long dead. World leaders, I think one of them was the head of the state of Austria. I don't precisely know, but I know there have been at least two instances of him talking about, I was talking to Churchill or I was talking to somebody. Those people are long dead, yet Biden makes a claim that recently I was talking to his head of the state. Absolute nonsense. This is what happens when you stay in politics too long. Now, this is a throwaway comment, could be addressed towards Trump, could be addressed towards Biden, but I think it is more addressed towards the general population of US. Both the politicians are bad. Biden's aides, supporters or helpers, ever alert to Trump's own cognitive decline, have pointed to his perceived napping during his trial. See, he is napping. If this was their best shot, they've never sat through a trial, most of which could cure insomnia. The author is saying trials, by their very intrinsic nature, are boring. So if Trump was caught napping, that is not a huge deal. That is not a huge deal. When I can't sleep, I ask my lawyer husband to tell me about his day. Trump's conviction, however, or alas, isn't the ending many had hoped for. He's still in the running and could still win. Basically, what people were hoping for was, because of his conviction, what would happen is he would be disqualified from the race itself. He would no longer be allowed to contest at all. And this is not just Democratic people or independents. Lot of Republicans also want Trump to lose. It is just that the Trump base is so strong, they can't come out publicly and say that. They will keep it to themselves, but internally they are hoping Trump, if he goes away, it would be the best. In weird news, no law keeps him from serving as president while in prison. You can still be the president if you contest an election from the prison and you win, and you can serve your tenure from the prison. There is no law that opposes this. Republicans soon must decide whether they're in for the short game or the long one. If Biden wins, the GOP has a shot in 2028 for the next 8 years or more, with a full bench of next generation aspirants, as was evidenced from the nomination spree that happened in their primary. Lots of young people, the youngest among them being a person of Indian origin, Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy, who made his billions from scamming people with a medical device. But okay, lots of young people are waiting in the fray. They want to get to the top post. So GOP, if Biden wins, the Grand Old Party, the Republican Party is known as the Grand Old Party, GOP, and you have a full bench of next generation aspirants who are looking to get into presidency. If Trump wins, the GOP might well lose its tether to the mothership. What this means is, understand, prior to Trump coming into power, the Democratic Party and Republican Party, the differences were very, very apparent. The GOP always believed in less government spending, less government influence in lawmaking, in business, everything. The government should have a minimal role. The Democratic Party was, let us do the best for people, welfare of the people. At least in their modern versions, these were the two common ideas that they debated on. And then when it came to Trump, now the ideas have turned entirely cosmetic. Transgender issues have become the central thing when people don't have money in their bank accounts, don't have food in their house. Transgender athletes participating in school or college events is a huge issue. Or let's say Christmas is not being allowed to Christmas is not being celebrated. Basically, one of the more recent events, if you follow sports, there have been numerous sporting prodigies that have come into sport. And when they come into sport, the old heads, the older people who are present in the league beforehand, they usually tend to soften them up. There are blows thrown at them, and it is a very, very expected outcome. Recently, a white American basketball female player, Caitlin Clark, has come into WNBA, and she's also being treated that way. But now it has turned into, see, racism exists everywhere. Even the black players are attacking the white player, completely missing the point. Even if she had been a black player and she had been hyped as much as she has been hyped, when she came into the league, people would try to soften her up. The same thing happened with LeBron James when he came in. The same thing happened with Zion Williamson when he came in. Or when the same thing happened with Luka Doncic when he came. All sorts of new players when they come into the league and they are hyped beforehand. The old heads try to cut them down a peg, or they test them. Is the hype real or is the hype only notional? For some players, end up proving no, what I did have, the hype around me was genuinely real, like LeBron. And then you also have people who had a lot of hype but end up becoming extremely, extremely passive when faced with their first signs of trouble. So these issues have come to dominate. How Caitlin Clark is being treated in the NBA, racism is pervasive. But the institutional damages that are being caused, people being, you see, the rising cost of inflation, the, let's say, living wage not being paid, uh, and police brutality, these issues are no longer important. What is important is absolutely tertiary surface level issues. Culture wars have become the primary issue, which is extremely sad. Forget everything else, tax the rich, tax the rich. If you tax the rich appropriately, fairly, if you tax the rich appropriately, fairly, uh, a lot of public conveniences that common people are currently paying for can become free in US. But then that is not a popular thing to do, because the rich people are also the chief contributors to election campaigns, and you cannot hope to offend them. One of the major issues that should be highlighted is the gun laws. The gun laws. But NRA has a death group on American politics. Yeah, lots of issues there. If Trump wins, GOP might well lose its tether to the mutton stream. The central idea that they were known for, we want to be more fiscally responsible. They are completely losing track of that. Either you're with Trump or against Trump, regardless of what he says, regardless of how he handles things. All of that goes for a toss. Free floating through time and space for an indefinite future. Basically, what the final form of the Republican Party will be at the end of Trump tenure, we don't know. Maybe we end up going completely against what we were initially standing for, because the Trump supporters believe in Trump. They don't believe in any central ideology. They don't believe in any primary idea. What they believe in is, if Trump is saying it, it must be true. It is valid. Trump is my God. There have been, isn't that level of demagoguery is definitely very, very impressive. Given Republican Party's current composition, people who want to block access to contraception, really, hopefully you realize what this is in reference to. This is in reference to Roe v. Wade being overturned. Basically, previously, up until the first 6 weeks of pregnancy, you have the right to abort the baby. From 6 to, as in the pregnancy was divided into 3 periods. The first month, you had absolutely no restrictions. You can abort the baby. In the next month, in the next period, you had to consult a physician. The physician has to give you a go ahead. And in the last one, only if the mother of the child's life was in danger, only then could you take a then you could take a rectification step. Otherwise, there was no abortion allowed. Unhindered, unsupervised abortion was not allowed after 6 weeks or 8 weeks, according to Roe v. Wade. That has been overturned. And now, what the Republican Party is also doing, recently a bill was introduced and a motion was introduced to discuss a bill. Understand? A motion was introduced in the House to discuss a bill whether contraception, right to contraception, should become a fundamental right. And all the Republicans in the House voted against it. Although in all the media outlets they're saying no, no, we want to we want to provide people the right to contraception, having access to different tools that will stop unwanted pregnancy. But when it came up in the House, even the motion to discuss it was turned down by the entirety of the Republican Party representatives. So, and given that the author is female, you can also understand why this issue would perhaps be closer to her heart. People who want to block access to contraception. Really, that long game option might not be the best outcome. Except for the alternate universe where Democrats govern for the long run. And for Democrats to govern for the long run, hopefully you realize Democrats, while you can always point, this is the state of politics today. You rarely ever point to the good that you've done. You always point to see how the other side is bad. That is what the Democratic Party strategy for this election is as well. See, Trump is so bad, Trump is so bad, Trump is so bad. Focus on what you've done to materially improve the life of people. If you focus on that, people will anyway vote for you. But the problem is they can't focus on that because they've done very little in order to materially improve the lives of people. The inflation is out of whack, and all the benefits that have been accrued are usually for the richer class. The common population is not getting the benefits. Therefore, winning the election has to be about identifying the lesser evil rather than the better candidate. Hopefully, you realize in this article, the author, White House is no place for old men. The author has attacked Biden's age and how he's unfit to be the president. The author has said, yes, Trump also has age issues, but then Trump has a lot of other issues as well. Trump has engaged in a lot of other tomfoolery. The author has not really supported one candidate over the other. The author has pretty much disparaged both the candidates. Yet, these are the only two candidates available. So the people have to identify which of these is a lesser evil. Okay. Now, article length, statistical analysis. The article length is 979 words. There are 58 sentences total. Article can be read and understood by somebody in the 8th or the 9th grade. Now, hopefully you understand 8th or 9th grade here. Not will all the context that I have added, because that requires earlier research and earlier reading and being aware of things. The article is fairly easy to read. It's plain English. For this range, this is plain English. The article is fairly easy to read. Hopefully, based on what you just present in the article, you realize Biden's old age is a potential concern for the author. Those people who are claiming, no, no, old age is fine, still in control, they're living in denial. That does not mean that Biden's old age should mean that Trump is the better candidate. Trump also has old age issues. And on top of that, Trump has so many other issues, lies and disinformation and something gaslighting, pettifogging, all sorts of wonderful things Trump has going against him. So the author has not given, finally, the author has not made a choice. This person is better, that person is better. The author has simply shown both these sides have their huge flaws. And the author is perhaps lamenting, how did we end up with these two candidates? That is the entirety of this article. Hopefully you learned something, not just about the article, about the world of politics, or at least US politics. That will be all for this episode. In the next episode, I'll be reading an article on the same issue, but with a different perspective. See you then.